Hey, this is Matt once again. Welcome back to another video. This is another paid request, this time for Guillermo. Thank you so much for that. And for those interested in requesting any type of videos or topics, reactions, commentaries, what have you, feel free to send it either directly to my PayPal or through my Patreon. Both links are down below in the info box. Now that the last of 3 requests Guillermo sent, thank you so much for that. And it's for a film I was curious about called Horror in the High Desert 2, Minerva. The reason being is because I did like the first one. The first one was on Tubi for free. I don't know if it is right now. This one is for free on Tubi if you want to watch it. But the first Horror in the High Desert, which I do have a review that on the channel, was a nice, creepy, subtle surprise. It's done in a fake documentary format, which I'm a sucker for. Because it's like watching a crime story, how you want to put it, unsolved mysteries type or whatever type. But you have the benefit of you could be curious about the mystery because it's a movie. Like this goes more into horror territory, just like the first one did. There's other films that have done that. The Tunnel, A Savage Land. So if it gets supernatural or if it gets horror, it's more. Well, I just allow those. Try to delve into that. But what I mean is you get pulled into the mystery, but you don't feel bad because no one really got hurt. No one really got killed. No one really was kidnapped or disappeared. This is the thing that, like, if I watch those for real, I just ultimately do end up feeling bad because it still was someone who disappeared or died or was murdered. So maybe intriguing mystery, but there's a sense of, ugh. Here you get the best of both worlds. You'd be entranced with the mystery, entranced, not entrenched, entranced, but at the same time, in the back of your head, everyone's okay. So it fits that balance for me. Like I said, The Tunnel in 2011 was a good one, Savage Land, and the first Horror in the High Desert. In that film, you had a guy who was on, I think, YouTube and other places called Gary, and he went missing. He had interviews with his sister, his buddy, journalists, investigators wondering what happened, what could have happened, who could have done it, finding the guy's vehicle, finding bits of information that might have led to where he might have gone, and then ultimately his footage at the end. Like I said, it was creepy, has some nice aerial drone shots, it was a pretty good looking movie, and the mystery was involving, it was intriguing, it was a nice creepy, overall nice surprise. We get to the sequel. Well, I did like it. I will say I was a bit disappointed. I did not hate the film. I did overall like it, but I was a bit disappointed with it. First and foremost, if you've never seen the first one, at the end, there's footage of him finding a cabin. He's trying to get out while this guy's, or figure, whatever, is stalking him. Ultimately, he's grabbed. We're led to believe he's dead. All they find is his hand or arm and a camera. But at the end, it said that there are influencers and people looked into this case, and it seems like they might have a idea where the cabin is, and they're going to find that out at this specific year. It was setting up the sequel to be these influencers and other people finding the cabin and the search for Gary, or in a search for whoever, whatever did this to him. That seemed like the promise of what this sequel was, but it doesn't do that. So now I feel, because I didn't know anything about this, I was hoodwinked. I felt a bit hoodwinked. I felt a bit tricked. Because at the end of this film, they do the same thing. At the end of this film, they say, they even have a guy, oh yeah, one of these influencers, and looking for this guy Gary, and some people say they don't know where the cabin is, but I know something you don't. Then it cuts as if that's going to be the third one. I'm like, you guys said that'd be the second film. So then what happens is, feels kind of like filler. And it feels like two stories put into one. Like they didn't have enough for one movie. So like 45 minutes is one thing and the rest of it is another. Now, with my complaints, why don't I hate it? Well, because with what it was telling, it still did a nice job keeping me intrigued, pulling me in. It's only like an hour and 14 minutes, so it's very, very short. It's fairly well acted. In this case, you have another journalist. It begins with a 911 call, which I thought was done in a fairly creepy manner, and then you have a journalist that says a 911 dispatcher told her about this lady named Minerva in this case, where Minerva was a geology college student. She was going to Nevada. They didn't have a place for her, so she was put into the middle of nowhere in this trailer where she only had one other guy as a neighbor. They interviewed the guy as well. I liked that guy. Was it Joseph? I'm bad with names, so sorry if I got that wrong, but I liked him. I actually would like to see more of him. So they interview him, they interview Minerva's best friend, they interview a fireman, volunteer fireman, who becomes very prominent later on. I will say, like, as soon as that disappointment that, okay, this isn't the story we're getting this other story, okay, then I was slowly pulled in again. Like I said, the acting is pretty solid. It still has the same beautiful aerial shots. It does a nice job editing to keep us informed, to keep the pace going. Never thought it was boring. There are nice subtle moments of creepiness. For example, when the neighbor talks about how he would hear these weird noises, and give these nice creepy shots of showcasing the night, and there's a bit where he has security footage and you barely see a figure pass by. It has a very crazy disfigured proportion of its body. There's another bit later on with another character named Brasher where her car's broken down and she's somewhere and she keeps saying, this guy keeps turning around in his car. I don't know what's he doing. So when the car turns and the headlights go, it passes in front of her, but when it passes, it reveals a figure staring at her. And there's like an oh shit moment, and then she immediately makes a run for it, which I thought was nice and smart. It wasn't shrieking, it was like oh shit, immediately try to go for the car. That was a good, creepy, like, is that what I think it is? Oh shit. That's what, it still has those moments in it. And like I said, it's still a somewhat interesting mystery. I will say it asks more questions. And there's more questions than answers. And instead it makes it more confusing than enlightening in terms of this mystery. And I'm not sure how I feel about that. Obviously, the makers have some kind of plan for a hopeful third film, if there is a third film. Because, for example, getting the spoilers, the Minerva's best friend tells about how Minerva would tell her that she would get sick in these physical ailments. And then the neighbor, he would say he would be feeling the same thing. And never answers as to why they're getting these physical sickness and ailments. Is there something in the water? Were they drugged? I thought Minerva was drugged getting to this death portion, but how would that explain the neighbor getting sick? The neighbor getting these ailments. The neighbor not feeling well and getting nauseous. He even says he gets nauseous. This nauseous feeling. Why was that the case? Never really explains. And then it brings up something that I'm not really a fan of. It's actually my least favorite part of this movie. This bit where within the wall there was this canvas bag hidden in the wall. Why was it hidden in the trailer wall? I don't know. But there was a tape. And when you play the tape, it's this guy, and the video's subpar, so you hear a voice, but you don't hear the cadence in the voice. And it's a guy stalking people, and at one point was in Minerva's trailer saying, what was the lines? I'm waiting for my friend. I got one for you. And you see his finger kind of doing this. I'm like, there's other victims he stalked and held at gunpoint. I'm like, so is this guy working with these things? Or creatures, or people, or Hills of Eyes, or whatever the fuck they are? If so, why? Is it for the shits and giggles? Is it because he wants to have an orgy with them? Is it because he wants to hunt them and they'll use him as bait, but at the same time he never tries to attack them? Does he want to join them? Like, what is the reason for this? Or is he just crazy? It brings it up, but it never answers. It never really goes depth into, I wonder who this guy is, what's his connection with these other folks, and it really dives into that at all. It just raises that question, and then 45 minutes in, it gets dropped. Then we go to a second story. I'm like, wait a minute, we got all these questions. Who is this guy? What is this guy? What's his connection? It never goes into that. I guess in hopes of a third one, but at the same like, it just leaves it a bit a twist that I didn't really care to see in there. It's making something that was creepy but simple, but now you're overcomplicating it. And when you overcomplicate shit, it sometimes to be less interesting. So what is the deal with that? Now again, there are nice creepy moments of direction, of subtlety where, like I said, you see security footage, or you see, the way interviews have their cadence, and like the neighbor, talk about what he might have seen on the security footage, which happened to be the last day Minerva was alive, or Minerva looking around and hearing creaking in the walls. I think it would be a loud jump scare, but it isn't, and that made it even more surprising. They didn't go for the typical loud jump scare boo. That's another thing I appreciate. There's not cheap jump scares in this. That was nice for them to hold back on that. Because a lot of these type of movies would have the easy tendency to use loud, cheap jump scares. It doesn't. I commend them for holding back on that. And even when we see this figure, like, at least once in the security footage and once at the very end, it looks like a different proportion than the figure at the end of the first movie. So is it multiple creatures? Is it multiple things? Like, there's obviously there's more than one, but it's like, well, what's going on here? The most he did is stories of narration that, oh, I don't think those are people, but that's really all you get. There's no talk to people who talk about legends or talk about anything. Like, there's nothing. It's just a lot of it up in the air. That's for me. It creates more questions and doesn't answer anything. When you don't answer anything and you create more questions, it becomes a bit more of a tease compared with the first. And again, the end of the first promised something else, and you didn't give people that. And then 45 minutes in, we're not in that story anymore. We're now in another story for the next 25 minutes with this Brasher lady. Well, she didn't die. She disappeared. Wait a minute. We're not going to finish her Minerva's story? Who is the guy? Who is the stalker? Why was she being physically ill? Why was the neighbor being physically ill? Why did the trailer get moved and the basement get filled up? Why was the basement filled up? What was in that basement? What are they hiding? Is someone hiding something? Or is it not? Like, all these questions, and it's like, nope, forget it. Let's go to the next story where a lady's coming home, her car breaks down, they interview her mom. Her mom says, a story about a creepy guy that tried to look into their car. And I guess after that, the idea of if your car breaks down, get out of your car and go into hiding and watch from afar in case the guy goes near your car. And I'm like, is that really the best bet? Wouldn't it be the better to stay in your car? Especially when we find out Brasher, the lady, had a dash cam that looked inside and outside the car. I'm like, it's looking inside and outside the car. You keep your car locked. Maybe hopefully have a weapon. Not right if he has a gun. Guess that wouldn't matter to be fair. But obviously by this point, it would have been safer if she was in her car. That's where you get the bit where, very creepy moment where she's like, this guy keeps, I don't know if she had her cell phone or something. She was filming like, this guy keeps circling. I don't know why. And the headlights reveal this figure. She did basically run for it. She gets dragged away. And then the last bit is the volunteer fire department, which was a nice, effective bit of creepiness, where you hear these weird sounds, and it goes on for a bit long. And to be fair, it's not a bit of a payoff. Just pretty much he's wandering around hearing noises, and he hears someone screaming. Then he loses light and his like night vision, and we see a figure in front of him, but he can't see it. And again, this figure doesn't seem like the figure from the first movie. He seems like a. Have you ever seen the X-Files? The host, like that body the creature had, kind of looked like that. Now, why did it not kill that guy, the volunteer firefighter guy? And we know he's alive because he's narrating, so we know he's not going to get killed here. But you think, well, this figure is right in front of him, and he couldn't see. Why did it not grab him? Why did it not kill him? Why did it not? Why did it not kill him? Why did it not take him? Why did it not drag him? If it got closer, there's a loud noise, and they ran away scared. But that wasn't really the case. At least that's what it didn't seem like. If it wasn't as apparent as it could have been. And then it cuts to the dairy in the first movie is brought up at the very beginning and the very end. And in the very end, they bring up Gary, who disappeared, died in the first one. Oh, influences, we know where this cabin's at. I'm like, again, you promised people this at the end of the first movie. Would I still be curious of a third film? Sure. Because I do think there's some competent direction in building up suspense, showing subtle signs of creepiness, that they get some pretty capable actors to make it believable. It's just, I thought that the story was not nearly as good as the first. The fact there was two stories put into one, so it didn't have the best flow. The fact that it creates all these new questions and there's zero answers just felt more like filler, like a tease, like what they really get out of this. Am I glad I watched it? Sure. I still have to pick up the first one on Blu-ray or DVD, whatever it's on. I still have to pick the first one up. This one, it was fine for one watch. It's for free on Tubi. I think if you like the first one, it's worth a watch. I would never see this again, though. Like the first one, I would actually like to rewatch. This one, one time's good enough for me. But it wasn't. I don't think it was bad. I don't think it was awful. It's short enough. It's not boring. Like I said, it's got some good creepy moments. It's got some capable acting. I'm a sucker for the format. Like I said, that fake documentary format. I think it's a nice, somewhat new, intriguing subgenre. I don't know how else you want to put it. I mean, I guess it's not too new. I mean, comedy-wise, This is Spinal Tap did it back in the day, where it's a documentary, but it's not really documentary. But I mean, like, this new era with horror This Cannibal Holocaust, you would say, is the same thing, to be honest. But I don't know. I'm a sucker for that. So at the very least, I'm going to be interested. Howard's Bill. That's another one I liked, and I would say I like Howard's Bill more than this. The first one more than this. Like I said, The Tunnel, Savage Land. There was one with Werner Herzog, Loch Ness. Was it Incident of Loch Ness? Or Beneath Loch Ness? I think Incident of Loch Ness. It was one of those. But with that said, not bad, but a little bit disappointing. Thanks for watching. We'll see you guys later. Bye-bye.